Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishne Swadhamopavate Dhanamagnanarithesaha Kalau Nashtadrishamesha Puranarkodhunodita Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Today is, of course, the holy appearance day of Varaha Dvadashi, the appearance day of Lord Varaha. So I've compiled a few quotes from Srila Prabhupada and other places that glorify the Lord in his wonderful form as transcendental Lord. First we will recite today's verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that's 5th canto, chapter 3, texts 4 and 5. Yeah, so I'll just recite the Sanskrit and then translation of purport. Ritvij Ushu Arhasi Mukur Arhatamarhanam Asmakam Anupadhanam Namo Nama Ityetavas Tad Upashikshitam Korhati Puman Prakriti Gunavita Karavnatir Anisha Ishwarasya Parasya Prakriti Purushayor Adavaktanabhir Nama Upakridhi Rupani Rupanam Sakala Janapinakaya Vrishna Nirasana Shivatama Pravara Guna Ganaika Desha Kathanad Rite, which means the priests began to offer prayers to the Lord, saying, O most worshipable one, we are simply your servants. Although you are full in yourself, please, out of your causeless mercy, accept a little service from us, your eternal servants. We are not actually aware of your transcendental form, but we can simply offer our respectful obeisances again and again, as instructed by the Vedic literatures and authorized acharyas. Materialistic living entities are very much attracted to the modes of material nature, and therefore they are never perfect. But you are above the jurisdiction of all material conceptions. Your name, form, and qualities are all transcendental and beyond the conception of experimental knowledge. Indeed, who can conceive of you? In the material world, we can perceive only material names and qualities. We have no other power than to offer our respectful obeisances and prayers unto you, the transcendental person. The chanting of your auspicious transcendental qualities will wipe out the sins of all mankind. That is the most auspicious activity for us, and we can thus partially understand your supernatural position. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to do with material perception. Even the impersonalist Shankaracharya says, Narayano Paro Vyaktat. Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is beyond the material conception. We cannot concoct the form and attributes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We must simply accept the description given in the Vedic literatures about the Lord's form and activities. As stated in Brahma Samhita 529, Chintamani prakata satmasukalpa vriksha lakshavrateshu surabhire vipalayantam Lakshmi sahasrashata sambhramase vyamanam Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desires in abodes built with spiritual gems, and surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He is always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. We can have some conception of the absolute truth, his form and his attributes, simply by reading the descriptions given in the Vedic literatures and authoritative statements given by exalted personalities like Brahma, Narad, Shukadev Goswami, and others. Srila Rupa Goswami says, Ataha Shri Krishna Namadina Bhavet Grahyam Indriyayi. We cannot conceive the name, form, and qualities of Shri Krishna through our material senses. Because of this, other names for the Lord are Adhokshaja and Aprakrita, which indicate that he's beyond any material senses. Out of his causeless mercy upon his devotees, the Lord appeared before Maharaj Nabi. Similarly, when we are engaged in the Lord's devotional service, the Lord reveals himself to us. Sevam mukhehi jihvado swayam eva spurati ada. This is the only way to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvataha. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service. There is no other way. We have to hear from the authorities and from the Shastras and consider the Supreme Lord in terms of their statements. We cannot imagine or concoct forms and attributes of the Lord. Om Gnana-timirantasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Swabhadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yudaparakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jaydev Goswami sang in his famous Dashavatara Stotras, Vasati Dashana Shikhare Dharani Tavalatna Shashini Kalanka Kaleva Nimagna Keshava Dhrita Shukaru Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. That means that the goddess of the earth, Bhudevi, is nicely decorating the Lord's tusk. It said that Shashini Kalanka Kala Iva. She's as if a speck on the crescent moon. You can just picture this. The Lord's tusk is being compared to a crescent moon because the tusk looks a little bit like that. And the goddess of fortune, Bhudevi, is situated on the end of his tusk. And so this is a very poetic way. Vasati Dashana Shikhare, on the peak of the tusk of the Lord is Dharani, Bhudevi. Shashini Kalanka Kalaiva Nirmagna, and she seems just like a spot on the crescent moon. Keshava Dhrita Shukarurupa Jaya Jagadish Hare. All glories to the Lord of the universe, Hari, who has assumed the form of Keshava in the form of this transcendental Lord. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, chapter 10, text 42 in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Shastras say everywhere that Krishna is the original personality of Godhead and that he has innumerable avatars or incarnations. Elsewhere in the Brahma Samhita it said, Ramadi Murtishu Kalani Anela Tishtan. Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha, and many others are consecutive expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After Krishna comes Balaram, after Balaram is Sankarsana, and then Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Narayana, and then the Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, Garabodakashayi Vishnu, and Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. All of them are avatars. From which form do all the avatars incarnate into this world? Who knows? Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, the third of these Purusha avatars. So Prabhupada continues, one must hear about the avatars. Narrations about such avatars are called avatara katha, the narrations of Krishna's expansions. Hearing and chanting these narrations is completely pious. Shrinvatam sukatha Krishna punya shravana kirtanaha. That's from the first canto. One who hears and chants can become punya, purified of material contamination. Here in Vrindavan especially, everyone is absorbed in Sri Krishna, Gokula Chandra, Radharaman, Gopinath. Krishna as the lover of the gopis and the son of Mother Yashoda, friend of the cowherd boys, lifter of Govardhan Hill, etc. So, until we actually awaken a real taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna, it's nice to remind ourselves that we actually don't have very much conception of the Supreme Lord, as Srila Prabhupada has already described in his 5th canto purport, which we just read. Our senses need to be purified. And then when we actually come to the transcendental platform, then we will be able to distinguish between the different forms of the Lord. Our problem is not in distinguishing between the different forms of the Lord. Our problem is in realizing that they're all one and the same. Advaita Vachitam Anadim Anantarupam, as the Brahma Samhita says. We don't really see this yet, because only a person on the transcendental plane can see that. And similarly, only a person on the transcendental plane can understand transcendental distinctions. We see mundane distinctions. And that's called sahaja. It's natural to see those distinctions. Sahaja means it comes along with birth. And a person who artificially makes distinctions between the forms of the Lord becomes an offender and is therefore called a sahajiya, somebody who takes things very easily. So that's not a good idea. And Prabhupada has given us a very nice purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita Lila, chapter 9, text 155, where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes, quote, there is no difference between the transcendental forms of the Lord. Different forms are manifested due to different attachments of different devotees. Actually, the Lord is one, but he appears in different forms just to satisfy his devotees. End quote. Now in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, in the Brahma Samhita, it is stated, Advaitam Achitam Anadam Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayoganam Cha. The Lord is Advaitam, without differentiation. There is no difference between the forms of Krishna, Rama, Narayana, and Vishnu. All of them are one. Sometimes foolish people ask whether when we chant Rama in the Hare Krishna mantra, we refer to Lord Ramchandra or Lord Balaram. Anybody know about this? Which one is it? Okay, we're all too smart. Srila Prabhupada continues, if a devotee says the name of Ram in the Hare Krishna Mahamantra refers to Balaram, a foolish person may become angry because to him the name Ram refers to Lord Ramchandra. Actually, there is no difference between Balaram and Lord Ram. In fact, there are 3 Ramas, is it not? There's also Parashuram. Somebody may be attached to Parashuram. There's at least one temple of Parashuram in Madhya Pradesh. Not very many others. But they're all Ramas. It does not matter whether one refers to Balaram or to Lord Ramchandra when chanting Hare Rama, for there is no difference between them. However, it is offensive to think that Balaram is superior to Lord Ramchandra, or vice versa. Neophyte devotees do not understand this Shastra conclusion, and consequently they unnecessarily create an offensive situation. In text 154, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu clarified this in a very lucid way. Ishwaratve bhedana manile hoy aparat. It is offensive for one to differentiate between the forms of the Lord. That is to say, as long as that person is a conditioned soul. He continues. On the other hand, one should not think that the forms of the Lord are the same as the forms of the demigods. This is certainly offensive, as confirmed in the Vaishnava Tantra. Yastu Narayanam Devam Brahma Rudradi Daivataihi Samatvainaiva Viksheta Sa Pashandi Bhaved Dhruvam. A Pashandi is one who considers the great demigods such as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. That's from the Hari Bhakti Vilas. The conclusion is that we should neither differentiate between the forms of the Lord nor equate the forms of the Lord with the forms of demigods or human beings. And subconsciously, this is in fact what we do. We don't know it. That's the problem. We don't know it yet. Or maybe we do. Those who are advancing may know. So Prabhupada continues. For instance, sometimes foolish sannyasis, thinking the body of the Lord to be material, equate Daridra Narayana with Narayana. And this is certainly offensive. Do you all know this? Daridra Narayana? What does it mean? Poor Narayana. The one pseudo-Mayavadi, he fancied that the beggar in the street is also Narayana. That's the natural application of Mayavad philosophy. So he was preaching that. And it becomes offensive because Narayana is hunting for chapatis and begging from shopkeepers who kick him out. And it doesn't work like that. So Prabhupada continues, unless one is instructed by a bona fide spiritual master, he cannot perfectly understand these different forms. The Brahma Samhita confirms, Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhaktao. One cannot understand the difference between the forms of the Lord simply by academic study or by reading Vedic literature. One must learn from a realized devotee. Only then can one learn how to distinguish between one form of the Lord and another. So how does one learn from a bona fide devotee? By hearing? That's part of it. What's the other half? Pariprashna is half of the equation. You get seva. Sevonmukhehi jihvado. This is the idea. If the pure devotee says, whatever you've heard you repeat, then sevamukho. With your tongue you begin seva. You preach whatever you have heard. Jare dekhe tare kaha Krishna upadesh ityadi. In this way we serve the pure devotee. We serve Krishna through his pure devotee. Or even we can say we serve Krishna in the form of his pure devotee. You can say that. The spiritual master in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is identified as a Prakash Sarup of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's confirmed. So although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, at the same time he is not Vishnu Tattva. He is not absolutely one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jai Shri Shri Gauritai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Shri Lalita Vishaka Sakta Radha Shyam Sundar Ki Jai. So the conclusion is that the spiritual master is one with and yet different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is inconceivable to mundane logic. So we should not waste time trying to understand it. We should accept that this is the version given by the Acharyas. So the conclusion, Prabhupada finishes his purport, is that there is no difference between the different forms of the Lord, but there is a difference between his forms and those of the demigods. So the forms are all one, and we can worship Lord Varahadev with full enthusiasm because he's also Krishna in another form. Srila Prabhupada writes in the second canto, 3rd chapter, text 22 purport, quote, especially for the householder devotees, the path of deity worship is strongly recommended. As far as possible, every householder, by the direction of the spiritual master, must install the deity of Vishnu, forms like Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayana, or Sitaram especially, or any other form of the Lord, like Nrsimha, Varaha, Gauranitai, Matsya, Kurma, Shalabram, Shila, and many other forms of Lord Vishnu, like Trivikrama, Keshava, Achyuta, Vasudev, Narayana, and Damodara, are recommended in the Vaishnava Tantras or Puranas, and one's family should worship strictly, following the directions and regulations of the Archana Vidhi. So if we want to know more about Lord Varahadev specifically, a list of incarnations is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they are as follows. Kumaras, Narad, Varaha, Matsya, Yajna, Naranarayana, Kardama Kapila, Dattatreya, Hayashirsha, Hamsa, Dhruvapriya, who's also known as Krishni Garbha, Rishabha, Prithu, Nrsimha, Kurma, Dhanvantari, Mohini, Vamana, Bhargava, that's Parashuram, Raghavendra, that's Ramchandra, Vyasdev, Pralambari Balaram, Krishna, Buddha, and Kalki. These are 25. Because almost all of these 25 Leela avatars appear in one day of Brahma, which is called a Kalpa. They are sometimes called Kalpa avatars. So in different millennia there are different incarnations, and they're innumerable, although some of them are very prominent, such as Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Ram, Nrsimha, Vamana, and many others. These incarnations are called Leela incarnations. So Varahadev is both a Leela avatar and a Kalpa avatar. Now, does anybody know about the Paravasthas? This is in Loku Bhagavatamritam. Loku Bhagavatamritam is a very important book if we want to understand the different forms of the Lord. And that's now being published by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. It was translated by Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu. There, Rupa Goswami says, although all the forms are one and the same, they do not all exhibit the same potency. And three forms are considered to be supreme. They are Ram, Narasimha, and Krishna, especially Krishna. Varahadev is not Paravasta, but he's certainly one of the major avatars, therefore we're celebrating today. It's a very nice verse given, quoted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was instructing Sanatana Goswami. This is from the 10th canto, chapter 2, text 40. Matsyashva kachapa nrsimha varaha hamsa rajanya vipradibudheshu kritavataraha tvam pasi nastribhuvanam chatathadunesha bharam bhuvo varayaduttava vandanam te. Such a beautiful verse. He says, O Lord of the universe, best of the Yadu dynasty, we are offering our prayers unto you mainly to diminish the heavy burden of the universe. Indeed, you diminished this burden formerly by incarnating in the form of a fish, horse, Hayagriva, tortoise, lion, Lord Narasimha, a boar, Lord Varaha, and a swan. You also incarnated as Lord Ramchandra, Parashuram, and Vamana, the dwarf. You've always protected us demigods and the universe in this way. Now please continue. So Srila Prabhupada describes also in Madhya Lila chapter 6, text 99. He's citing the Loku Bhagavatamrita, which I just mentioned, in which Srila Rupa Goswami has enumerated also 25 avatars, the same list that we just gave. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not mentioned as a Leela avatar because he's an incarnation in disguise, Chamna avatar. In the age of Kali, there are no Leela avatars, but there is an incarnation of the Lord manifested in the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This incarnation comes in every Kali Yuga, but Krishna himself in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not come in every Kali Yuga. That we need to recognize. So Varaha Katha is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the third canto, chapter 3 especially, chapter 13 especially, beginning in around text 19 is when the Lord's appearance is described. And chapters 18 and 19, the story goes on, and by the chapters 18 and 19, he's fighting with Hiranyaksha, and he eventually dispatches Hiranyaksha. So this is the pastime of Lord Varaha. You all know that story. So instead of reading that story today, I thought it would be nice to read some realizations of the Acharyas about Lord Varahadev and some prayers that have been offered by great personalities. In 10th canto, in chapter 15, text number 8, in his purport, Srila Prabhupada describes another interesting fact. He says, in his form of Varaha, Lord Krishna personally saved the earth. And indeed, the earth is understood to rest perpetually on the potency of Shesh. Both Varahadev and Shesh are expansions of Balaram, who is himself an expansion of Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead. In the fourth canto, chapter 17, text 34, Bhudevi, the same goddess of fortune who is situated on his tusk, she prays, "My dear Lord, you are always unborn. Once, in the form of the original boar, you rescued me from the waters at the bottom of the universe. Through your own energy, you created all the physical elements, the senses, and the heart for the maintenance of the world." Purport. This refers to the time when Lord Krishna appeared as the supreme boar, Varaha, and rescued the earth which had been merged in water. The Asura Hiranyaksha had dislocated the earth from its orbit and thrown it beneath the waters of the Garbhodaka ocean. Then the Lord, in the shape of the original boar, rescued the earth. What does Prabhupada mean when he says original boar? Original boar means Adi Varaha, because there are two Varahas, is it not? There's a Shweta Varaha and there's an Adi Varaha. Adi Varaha is sometimes called Rakta Varaha, or Red Varaha. So we'll say more about those in a few moments. But in the fifth canto, chapter 18, from texts 34 through 39, the Devas, Lord Varahadev actually lives there eternally in Jambudweep, northern part of Jambudweep, which is known as Uttarakuru Varsha. So Bhudevi and others, inhabitants of that place, they worship him with unfailing devotional service, and they repeatedly chant the following Upanishad mantra, which was translated here. Quote, "O Lord, we offer our respectful obeisances unto you as a gigantic person." Why gigantic? Because Lord Varahadev is very big. If the earth, the entire earth, appears only as a speck on his tusk, then you can imagine how big is his Lord Varaha. Tamal Krishna Goswami used to say that he met one Baptist preacher in the southern part of the United States. And this person gave him his own reasoning about God. He said, God is so big, the reason we don't see God is because God is so big, you can't stand far enough away from him to see him. So something like that is maybe applicable here. His huge form of gigantic boar form. Simply by chanting mantras, we shall be able to understand you fully. What mantras is she referring to? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Of course, in Vedic mantras, we also have Purusha Sukta, and so many mantras are used for yajnas. And this is an interesting point, yajna, because one of Lord Vishnu's 1,000 names is yajna, And the name Yajna particularly refers to what we sometimes call Yajna Varaha, Lord Varaha, who is said to personify all the elements of sacrifice from the Vedas. And this is what the residents of Jambudvip, they continue, Udu Guru Varsha Vasins. They say, you are Yajna, and you are Kratu, the ritual. Therefore, all the ritualistic ceremonies of sacrifice are part of your transcendental body. And you are our only enjoyer of all sacrifices. Your form is composed of transcendental goodness. You are known as Triyuga, because in Kali Yuga you appeared as a concealed incarnation, and because you always fully possess the three pairs of opulences. What are the three pairs? Aishwaryasya, Samagrasya, Dhiryasya, Yashashashriya, Ityadi. Famous verse from Vishnu Purana given by Parashara Muni. Opulence consists of knowledge and renunciation and power and beauty and wealth and strength, so many things. By manipulating a fire-generating stick, great saints and sages can bring forth the fire lying dormant within wood. In the same way, O Lord, those expert in understanding the absolute truth try to see you in everything, even in their own bodies. Yet you remain concealed. You are not to be understood by the indirect processes involving mental or physical activities. This is what Rupa Goswami we've already heard this morning. Does anybody remember the verse quoted? Very sharp brahmachari here. Just take note. If you practice brahmacharya, your mind will be very sharp. He knows. Ataha Shri Krishna Namadi na bhave grahyam indriyai. Indriya means your senses, and grahya means you cannot grasp it. Not only with your senses you cannot understand Krishna, but even with your mind you can also not understand Krishna. Panthastu koti shadavatsara sampragamyo vayo rathapi manaso munipongavaram. Even if you're a munipongava, you're a perfect rishi with even sharper mind than he has, still with the mind alone you cannot understand Krishna also, because he doesn't reveal himself like that. He doesn't have to. So he remains concealed. Because you are self-manifested only when you see that a person is wholeheartedly engaged in searching for you, do you reveal yourself. And how do we search for Krishna? How do we search for Krishna? Sevam mukhehi jivadao. Yeah. The Acharyas commenting on the Srimad Bhagavata Chatushloki, they explain that the last verse of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, which says, Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam, one must search for the absolute truth directly and indirectly, positively and negatively. What that means is that you have to search for the way in which you can serve the pure devotee, because his grace will reveal everything about Krishna. Prakashante Mahatmana. If one is such a great soul that he's prepared to unreservedly serve the pure devotee, then all the imports of the Vedas are automatically revealed to him. This is the idea. So this is what it means to wholeheartedly engage in searching for the Lord. To wholeheartedly search for service. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. O Lord, you do not desire the creation, maintenance, or annihilation of this material world, but you perform these activities for the conditioned souls by your creative energy, exactly as a piece of iron moves under the influence of a lodestone. Inert matter moves when you glance over the total material energy. O my Lord, this is the residence of Uttara Kuruvarsh in Jambudvip continuing. As the original bore within this universe, you fought and killed the great demon Hiranyaksha. Then you lifted me. It looks as if Bhumi Devi is representing those residents. She's speaking here. Then you lifted me, the earth, from the Garbhodaka ocean on the end of your tusk, exactly as a sporting elephant plucks a lotus flower from the water. I bow down before you. Sometimes Bhudevi and Varaha Deva are worshipped together as Bhuvaraha, another famous form. Not so much here, but in South India you can find. Now there's a famous Vedic mantra called Jitante Stotram. And the Srimad Bhagavatam has its own Jitante Stotram, because the prayers offered to Lord Varahadev after his appearance by the Rishis also begin with these words, Jitante. So, all the sages uttered with great respect, quote, O unconquerable enjoyer of sacrifices, all glories and all victories unto you. You are moving in your form as the personified Vedas, and in the hair holes of your body the oceans are submerged. Just bookmark that. And each follicle of hair in his transcendental body, it's big enough to contain so many oceans. We're going to return to this point in a minute, so it will be on the test. For certain reasons, to uplift the earth, you have now assumed the form of a boar. O Lord, your form is worshipable by the performance of sacrifice. Again, we return to this theme. Sacrifice. But souls who are simply miscreants are unable to see it. All the Vedic hymns, Gayatri and others, are in the touch of your skin. In your bodily hairs is the kusha grass. In your eyes is the clarified butter, ghee. And in your 4 legs are the 4 kinds of fruitive activities. O Lord, your tongue is a plate of sacrifice. Your nostril is another such plate. In your belly is the eating plate of sacrifice, and in another plate of sacrifice is the holes of your ears. In your mouth is the Brahma plate of sacrifice. Your throat is the plate of sacrifice known as Soma. And whatever you chew is known as Agnihotra. The Lord eats through the Agnihotra. He also eats through the Brahmanas who perform the Agnihotra. It's stated like that. Moreover, O Lord, the repetition of your appearance is the desire for all kinds of initiation. Your neck is the place for the 3 desires, and your tusks are the result of initiation and the end of all desires. Your tongue is the prior activities of initiation, that's called Purashcharana. Your head is the fire without sacrifice, as well as the fire of worship. And your living forces of prana are the aggregate of all desires. O Lord, your semen is the sacrifice called Soma Yajna. Your growth is the ritualistic performances of the morning. Your skin and touch sensations are the 7 elements of the Agnishtoma sacrifice. Your bodily joints are the symbols of various other sacrifices performed in 12 days. Therefore, you are the object of all sacrifices called Soma and Asoma, and you are bound by yajnas only, O Lord. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are worshipable by universal prayers, Vedic hymns, and sacrificial ingredients. We offer our obeisances unto you. You can be realized by the pure mind, free from all visible and invisible material contamination. Because when you know that you're in Maya, that's one kind of contamination. But even worse than that is when you don't know that you're in Maya. So there's visible and visible contamination. We offer our respectful obeisances to you as the supreme spiritual master of knowledge in devotional service, O lifter of the earth with its mountains, from which you have lifted with your tusks, is situated as beautifully as a lotus flower, with leaves sustained by an infuriated elephant just coming out of the water. Just note here, this is the same analogy that was given a moment ago by Bhudevi. It's given again by the Rishis. That's called Parampara Praptam. Maybe they're Sri Vaishnavas. Your transcendental body has become beautiful because you are lifting the earth on the edge of your tusks. O Lord, for the residential purposes of all inhabitants, both moving and non-moving, this earth is your wife, and you are the Supreme Father. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you, along with Mother Earth, in whom you have invested your own potency, just as an expert sacrificer puts fire in Arani wood. We should have some respect for Bhudevi. In the Smriti Shastra, the injunction is there: as soon as you rise in the morning and step outside, there is a mantra that you say to beg forgiveness from Goddess Earth. Because she's called Dhara. Why is she called Dhara? Or in the Jayadev Goswami we quoted Dharani, means the same thing. In fact, this earth is also called Dhara or Dharani. She's the wife of the Supreme Lord. When we touch our foot to the goddess of fortune, it's an offense. So a conscious person should think like this. And the Smriti Shastra is there to help us become conscious of Krishna. And to become conscious of Krishna is one thing, but it's almost more important, you can say. In fact, it is more important to become conscious of his devotees. And they are ubiquitous throughout the cosmic manifestation. Devotees are everywhere. We have to be very careful. Bandham Vitsavatana. Quote, who else but you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, could deliver the earth from the water? It's not very wonderful for you. However, because you acted most wonderfully in the creation of the universe, by your energy you have created this wonderful cosmic manifestation, O Supreme Lord. Undoubtedly, we are inhabitants of the most pious planets, the Jana, Tapas, and Satyalokas. But still, we have been purified by the drops of water sprinkled from your shoulder hairs, by the shaking of your body. Here in Vrindavan, if you take a walk, you will undoubtedly encounter sooner or later a boar. And they live in the sewers of Vrindavan. And sometimes when they step out of their sewer, their house, they shake off and all this water flies everywhere. And you don't want to, well, in Vrindavan maybe it's not so bad, but normally in the material world you don't want to be anywhere in the vicinity of such a boar. Actually, these are transcendental boars. And in case you're interested, that position is available here in Vrindavan. You just have to act like a boar while you're here. And then you can continue in that mode in your next life. It's automatic. So any mode of sense gratification that we prefer, you all see the monkeys and the pigeons and so many others, what they're doing. If this is our interest, then that option is there in devotional service in Vrindavan Dham, but that's not what our acharyas teach. So, still, the residents of the higher planetary systems have considered that they're purified by this water that is shaken off the transcendental bristles of this Lord in his Adi boar form. Because it's like Charanamritam. It is Charanamritam. They continue and conclude their prayers here. O Lord, there is no limit to your wonderful activities. Anyone who desires to know the limit of your activities is certainly nonsensical. Everyone in this world is conditioned by the powerful mystic potencies. In case we don't know that, because certainly we don't know that, at least we don't know the full extent. Krishna very kindly arranges that automatically, in due course of time, it will be revealed to us. We will see how we are conditioned by the Lord's mystic potencies. We will see. Please bestow your causeless mercy upon these conditioned souls. This is their concluding prayer. When we offer prayers, we offer glorification. First we state our fallen position, then we offer glorification. We can see these residents of the higher planetary systems, and led by Blue Devi especially, when they're offering prayers, they're very noble, because most of their prayer is glorification, and even at the end, the final component of prayer is that you ask for some benediction. But what kind of benediction have they asked for? They haven't asked for anything selfish. They said, please bestow your causeless mercy upon these conditioned souls, all these conditioned souls. Here in Vrindavan, they're all considered to be liberated souls, those who are living here. But everywhere else, when you leave Vrindavan and go elsewhere, you notice it immediately. It's not like Vrindavan, outside of Vrindavan. They're real conditioned souls, and they're really suffering. Therefore, on the doorway of the Mathura Janmabhoomi Mandir in Mathura, this sentiment from Prahlad Maharaj is also shared. Swasti astu vishvasya khala prasidatam. May all the envious demons be pacified. Jayant bhutani shilam methodya. By thinking of each other's welfare. But you cannot do that unless you're a devotee and unless you're liberated. Manascha bhadram bhajatad adhokshaje. Our minds will become purified and auspicious by worshipping this adhokshaja Lord, who is beyond their comprehension. Worshipping through seva, through hearing and through seva. Then our minds and our hearts become auspicious and purified. Then we can actually think of anyone else's welfare. Otherwise, until that point, we cannot even think of our own welfare. So they're praying like this also. Aveshyatam no matirabhyaitaki. May we selflessly enter into this mood. Aveshyatam. Let us enter into this idea. This is Prahlad Maharaj's noble devotional sentiment, and these residents of the higher planetary system, led by Bhudevi, the Lord's consort, they're praying likewise. So, what else can we say? Srila Prabhupada spoke about Lord Varahadev on many occasions. It's getting a little bit late. I don't want to go too far there. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, so many pastimes in which he has assumed the ecstasy of Lord Varaha. One day, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt the ecstasy of the boar incarnation and got up on the shoulders of Murari Gupta. And thus they both danced in Murari Gupta's courtyard. He began to cry out, Sukara, Sukara! This crying out from the boar incarnation of the Lord. He assumed his form as a boar incarnation and got up on the shoulders of Murari Gupta. He carried a small garu, a small water pot with a nozzle, and thus he symbolically picked up the earth from the depths of the ocean. For this is the pastime of Lord Varahadev. That's what Srila Prabhupada writes in Adi Lila, chapter 17, text 19. So in Los Angeles, on February 18th, 1970, Srila Prabhupada spoke. He said, one demon, Hiranyaksha, he pushed this earthly planet within the water, and Lord Krishna delivered the earthly planet from the water in the shape of a boar. So that auspicious day is today, Varaha Dvadashi. This is called Varaha Dvadashi. So on this day, it is better to sing, to glorify the different incarnations of the Lord within this universe. He delivered this earthly planet by the tusk, and he kept the whole world on his tusk, just like Lord Krishna as Giridhari held up the big hill on his pinky finger. So Lord Varahadev held up the earth on his tusk only. On this day, it is better to sing, to glorify the different incarnations of the Lord. We can just imagine how big he appeared, Prabhupada is describing. And the world at that time appeared just like the moon disk with some marks on it. So, Keshavadhrita Varaha Sharira. He says, my dear Lord, you have appeared as a great boar. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. In Bhubaneswar, on January 31st, 1977, Srila Prabhupada also spoke on Varahadev. He's talking about Krishna's enjoyment. Just because Krishna has appeared as a boar, it doesn't mean that he's suffering. We've already described. If you and I reincarnate as a boar, even in Vrindavan, it's not that easy life. It's not Alamse devotional service. It's a very difficult time if you're living as a boar. I mean, just give it some thought, but not too much thought. So everything is Ananda Chinmaya for Krishna. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pradibhavitabhis. Sometimes a big man becomes a horse. You understand? Prabhupada says, sometimes a big man becomes a horse. There's a nice, interesting story that the big Prime Minister Gladstone, English Prime Minister, he wanted to entertain his grandson, so he became like a horsey and running around on his hands and knees in his office with his grandson on his back slapping him. Big man. Nobody can get in to see the Prime Minister, but this little boy is slapping him on the back and saying, "Go, go." So, like that, Krishna comes to this mature world in this way. Prabhupada also writes in Bhagavad Gita, and the Yoginam Api Sarvesham verse, he says, "It is by great fortune that one comes to Krishna consciousness on the path of Bhakti Yoga to become well situated according to the Vedic direction. The ideal yogi concentrates his attention on Krishna, who is called Shyam Sundar, who is as beautifully colored as a cloud, whose lotus-like face is as effulgent as the sun, whose dress is brilliant with jewels, and whose body is flower garland. Illuminating all sides in his gorgeous luster, which is called Brahmajyoti. He incarnates in different forms such as Ram, Narasimha, Varaha, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But as Krishna, he descends as a human being, as the son of Mother Yashoda, and therefore he is known as Krishna, Govinda, and Vasudeva. He is the perfect child, husband, friend, and master. And he is full with all opulences and transcendental qualities. If one remains fully conscious of these features of the Lord, he is called the highest yogi. In Prabhupada's commentary to chapter 18, text 65, he also emphasizes that the devotee should actually fix his mind mainly on Krishna, Shyam Sundar. After all that we've mentioned of the different incarnations and their great glories, and their oneness also, still Prabhupada says this. Why? Well, I'm going to let Bilvamangala Thakur answer that question in a most beautiful verse. He says, Yadro marandra paripurti vidhavadaksha varaha janmani bapurvarami samudraha tannamanathamaravindra drasham yashoda pani dvayantara jalai Snapayam Bhuva. Although in his Varaha incarnation, we've already heard, I told you to bookmark this, many oceans could hardly even fill the Lord's one hair follicle. But Yashodamai bathed that same Supreme Personality of Godhead, that same lotus-eyed Lord, with just the water contained in her two joined palms. This mantra we can recall when we are doing Abhishek, those who are doing deity worship. Although in his Varaha incarnation many oceans could hardly even fill the Lord's hair follicles, Yashoda Mai bathed that same lotus-eyed Lord with just the water contained in her two joined palms. So, what else can we say? Therefore, in the Varaha Purana itself, there's a statement praising the residential quarters of Mathura. Lord Varahadev tells Bhumi herself, after Lord Varahadev dispatched Hiranyaksha and saved the earth from this nether regions, he came and rested in Vishramghat in Mathura. Vishramghat in Mathura is called Vishramghat or Vishranti Ghat because that's the resting place of Lord Varaha. Varahadev is actually the Adi deity. The original Adi Varahadev is there in Mathura Dham. It's his place, even before it was Krishna's place. And there are actually two Varahadevs there. That one is Adi Varaha or Red Varaha. There's also Shweta Varaha there. Only Indian devotees are allowed to see Shweta Varahadev, but Adi Varahadev is giving darshan to everyone. So, on this occasion, he told Mother Earth, whole Varaha, Adi Varaha Purana is there, and he's glorifying Mathura like anything. Varahadev himself is glorifying Mathura like anything. He says, any person who becomes attracted to places other than Mathura will certainly be captivated by the material energy. That's from the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 12. Similarly, Bhakti Ratnakar also cites the same Purana, and there Lord Varahadev tells Bhudevi, "Oh Vasundhare," Vasundhara is another name of earth. Why? Why Vasundhara? She bears all the valuable gems. Vasu means wealth. Wealth means earth. Wealth is not cubic zirconia or paper notes or other things that oil that sometimes we say this is the measure of wealth in the modern day economy, but actually wealth is the earth itself, Bhudevi. Therefore she's called Vasundhara. She is the one who bears all these things. Anything valuable we have, it comes from her. There's much we can say about that. So, he says like that. And there are many other such similar statements. But for lack of time, I'm going to abbreviate here. Here in Vrindavan, just around the corner, if you go down the Parikama path, there's a famous old temple of Varahadev there. Used to be the deity was exactly on the path itself in a small shrine. Now they've moved him into a big sandstone temple, which they're renovating. It looks like he's destined to become the new resident in one of these ashram temple sort of complexes that generate a lot of income. But that's Varahadev here in Vrindavan. It is said that the Lord one day showed this form to the gopis who wanted to see it. They wanted to see him in his Adi Varaha form, so he showed them. Other people say he wanted the gopas, his cowherd boyfriends, wanted to see it because Krishna reciprocates with every class. So either way. And in Mathura, I've already mentioned that deity of Adi Varaha there was actually manifested by Kapila Muni. Kapila Muni was thinking that it would be nice to have a deity of Varaha, and he had this mystic potency, it would seem. Satya Kama, Satya Sankalpa, that whatever he thought of becomes an instant fact. So just as he was conceiving of this deity in his mind, the deity appeared before him, tangibly. So therefore the deity was worshipped in the Satya Yuga by Indra, because Kapila Muni gave this deity to Indra. Indra took the deity to Svargaloka and was worshipping there. But in the Treta Yuga, when Ravan conquered Svargaloka and all the demigods, he took that deity with him to Sri Lanka and was worshipping the same Varahadev deity in Sri Lanka. But we know what happened to Ravana. Who killed Ravana? Ramchandra, one of the three Rams we mentioned. When he got this deity from Lanka, he brought it back to Ayodhya. And from Ayodhya, when Shatrughna was dispatched here to Mathura to rule here, on behalf of Lord Ramchandra, the deity came with Shatrughna. And he's been installed there in Mathura at Adi Varaha Mandir ever since. Long, long history. Ancient deity there. So that's Mathura. There are so many others. Tirupati, if anyone has ever been to Tirupati, you know, the original deity of Tirumala is actually Adi Varahadev, who resides on the bank of the Swami Pushkarini tank there, next to the temple. Varahadev actually owned that place first. There are other places in South India. Sri Mushnam is a famous place. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Vrindavan and he saw another temple of Shweta Varaha. He offered him respects and prayers there. Srila Prabhupada comments, this is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 9.